All right, well, then it's going to be a small but austere group tonight. And maybe some people will join us as we proceed, but we like to try and start on time. There's Ed Joseph. All right. Well, good to see you.
Great to see you guys.
Okay. And welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So if everybody has your Buddhism 101 prayer book, if we can all do our opening prayers. So maybe Louisa, would you like to be the Yomze this evening?
I'm not prepared, so can you pick someone else? Thank you.
Okay. All right, sure. Gary, how about you?
Okay. I don't think I'll be called away in the early part, but as I discussed with you earlier, but I'll start.
Where'd they go?
Okay. Ed, you got your books in the mail?
I did receive them. Thank you so much.
All right, very good. And we'll ask you to be the Yomze in weeks to come.
For sure. No worries.
Okay, very good. Okay, so Gary, whenever you're ready, please begin.
All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dag ladang war jepe dra, no par jepe kag. Tharpa dang tham che kien pe bardu cho par je pa tam che ki so je pe. Manam ka dang nyam pe sem chen tam che de wa dang den. Du nyal dang drill nur du lana me pa yang dag par zog pe chang chu rin po che thog par ja. Action Bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De che du sang ma ge ki bar du lu nag yi sung ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu nag yi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang da sam gi pa bar du lu nyag yi sam ge wa la ko. Long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. we take refuge in all the noble dakas, dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drenchen sawa dangju parje pe pelden lama dampanam lak yabsu chio. Idam kyo kor gila sognam lak yabsu chio. Sange chom dende nam lak yabsu chio. Dampe cho nam lak yab absu chio. Bagpa jendun nam lak yabsu chio. Pao kandro cho consume so geshe ke shendang den pa nam la kapsu chio. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Jang chu ying por chi ki bar sange nam la kyab su chi cho dang jang chu senpai so gla yang de shan kyab su chi. Ji tar nong ki de shen ki jang chu tu ni ki pa dang jang chu senpai lab pa la de dang ri shim ne pa tar. De shen ro la fin don du jang chu sen ni ke ji xing de xin du ni lab pa la ring pa xin du lab par ji. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye cho dang so ki chog nam la chanchu bardu di nag kyab su chi dag ji jen sok ji pe so nam ki dro la pen chir sangye dru par shok. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadang yampe semchen tamche dewa dang dewa gyudang den parjurchi. Dugnao dang dugnao gi gudang drawar jurchi. Dugnao me pe dewa dang mi drawar jurchi. Ni reng chak dang ni dang rawe tang yong le ne par jurchi.
Thank you, Gary. If everybody's got your book and you'll go to page 12, I'd like to recite this evening. So you can recite this along with me. So this is called the Sagaramati Requested Sutra that was requested of the Buddha from King of Sagaramati. So likewise be extinguished. Extinguished all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me, completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food, and drink peacefully. Enjoy it and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles. All general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated. So this is an excellent way to visualize our practice, our study, whatever it is that we're encountering, that we are doing this to overcome whatever negativities we have within ourselves. So thank you all for being here. And tonight, I looked on the calendar and I realized that today actually is the first day of our new 8-week cycle that we started. The past cycle started on January 3rd. And if I counted properly, we did 8 different sessions. So tonight is actually the first session of the new cycle, which I think is good. Being as though last week was Losar, and now we're coming with this new energy, and I know that there's lots of things that are happening, outside of our selves, so to speak. But within us, hopefully, we still have positive vibrations. We still have a positive outlook, and that we are considering our Buddha field that we are trying to manifest around ourselves and so on. So whenever there is something terrible happening, there's also very good things happening. We may have to search a little bit more for those good things to be happening because the negative things get all the attention. But nevertheless, we need to be able to hold on to the positive things, or rather recognize the positive things and not fall prey to the negative things. So being as though this is the first session of a new cycle, generally we'd like to begin by considering Shakyamuni Buddha, his life. So very often we've recited the life of the Buddha. Well, we're going to take a little bit of a shortcut with that. We're going to focus on the Buddha and his early teachings, what he was teaching and what he was teaching to the fundamental people, the people that needed the most attention. And this was in the vernacular of the 3 yanas, which are the 3 vehicles, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. We're going to focus a little bit more on the Hinayana because these are the basic teachings. These are the fundamental teachings of discipline. being able to organize ourselves, organize our intellectual mind, so that it becomes a good, stable platform for us to be able to investigate other things that come along in our practices and so on. Also, I'd like to announce that we are going to begin, I'm going to send out a message to everybody that we're going to begin doing practice twice a month at Dharma Surya in the shrine room. So we're going to do that on the second and the fourth Saturdays each month in the afternoon, 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So what we'll likely to do is we'll do a Nundro practice, and we'll also do a deity yoga practice. So we have time, we'll take a break in between, but it'll give us an opportunity to practice together at length and be able to kind of stabilize what our practice is at home, be able to give us the confidence to be able to do practice at home. There are several of us who have been practicing for quite some time, and others who are new will get some support from the people who have been doing the practice and so on. So it's very important to do that. Getting all these teachings is very, very good, important, but to do the practices and be familiar with how to do them for good result is very important too. So that's we want to work on that. Yes, Michael.
Can you remind us of the scheduling and when we start?
Yes, we're going to start on March the 26th, I think it is, or the 27th. It's, let me look at the calendar here.
26.
But I'm going to send out a message to everybody, so I will do that. But just let me look at the calendar here. So we're going to start on the 26th. So that's when we'll be beginning this. And then it's going to be the second and the fourth Saturdays of each month. So that's going to be the way we'll schedule this. And then we'll be spending the evening down at Dharma Surya. And maybe if you all want to have a dinner together, we can do that. We can, socialize a little bit, have more conversation and so on. We don't have to run off. And if you've got time, if you have the ability to be able to do that, it'd be wonderful to be able to spend more time together. And then Sunday, we're going to be working with the Garchin Children's Program that we do at Dharma Surya. And we're inviting the kids to come in. It's all been online for these past couple of years. So now we're starting to open up the center and have people come in. So there's a lot of good things happening right now. So I wanted to tell you that. And if you can join us, if you can't join us, we do want to Zoom our practices. So we'll have that. And so for those of you who are out of town or can't make it for some reason, maybe it's more convenient to join us with the Zoom. So so that'll be good. And then there was one other thing. I was trying to remember what it was. Okay, well, I'm sure it'll come up. Oh, I know what it was. I was going to say that last week, I was very, very happy that we had such a really good meeting. And frankly, the past 2 or 3 weeks, even before that, these discussion groups have gotten very good. And I've really been heartened by that. I think it's really interesting and it's great to share this. And I think we've been learning maybe even more than just, hearing a lecture and so on. So I'd like to continue that. And it's predicated on the idea that everybody participates in the discussion. So, if people are a little reticent with putting up their hand or adding something, we'll call on people and so on. Don't feel, like we're picking on anybody, but we're just trying to encourage everybody to open up and share, because we learn a lot by the things that we say and the things that we hear other people talk about. So I think that works really great. And I've been doing that with the Garchin Children's Program. The kids that I've been working with are the kids who are young teenagers. They're 12, 13, 14 years old. And they've kind of grown up. They first started with Dharma Surya when they were 7, 8 years old and so on, and have gone, by progression to get to where they are now. So they've been hearing a lot of stories and so on. So now we're engaging them in discussion, and it's been very rewarding. It's been very, very, very good. And the children have been asking really, really good questions. So I think it's a great method to proceed along. And we'll do whatever we can. If somebody has a fundamental question that we need to talk about, we'll make time for that. But if somebody asks a question that requires a little bit more time to fathom out, we'll do that too. So I hope that everybody is agreeable with that, and that'll work really good. So does anybody have any comments or questions now about the opening prayers or about any of the programs that I just talked about in the way that we are thinking about proceeding with our teachings and practices and so on? Yes, Michael.
Do you see us being involved in your Sundays? And if so, how?
It's more for the kids. I wouldn't want to take away anything from the children. It's their time to have access and so on. But if anybody wanted to come in, we would be in the shrine room. And if anybody wants to come in and sit and hear what's going on, and maybe at an appropriate time, make a comment or ask a question, but it primarily is for the kids. So I wouldn't want to, rob them of that opportunity. So, maybe you just want to come in and sit and meditate. That'd be perfectly fine. Does that sound like a good idea? What do you think of that? Okay, good. Okay, so yes, Tom.
On Saturdays, you were talking about we're going to do non-drill and deity yoga practice, correct?
Well, that's one suggestion, yeah.
Okay, so as far as the non-drill practice, are we going to do anything particular? I mean, are we going to go through the all 4 steps, or are we going to, is there anything that we're going to concentrate on more than others? Because I'm really interested in doing the mandala offerings, learning that more thoroughly and getting the specifics of that really down, because I mean there's a lot to that, I know that, but I mean I know I'm being kind of selfish, but there's a lot of aspects of that that I like to really to get into the minutia of. So
well, I think that it is something that you would begin when the first 2 mantra practices have been completed. However, I think it would be a good idea to make an introduction of the mandala offering to everybody, as well as the 4 yogas, the 4 guru yoga practices that come after that. So, but to say that we're going to, continue to do that, I don't think that's practical right now. I think it would be really good to get people, interested in doing the first, the refuge practice and the Vajrasattva practice, and then concentrate on that. But I think, in short order, we can introduce the next 2, just as, like I said, an introduction to keep people, to give them something to look forward to understand that there's something else going on. If there's something that you or anybody else needs some individual practice on, well, we can talk about that too, and maybe there's another time for that. But so I hope that is satisfactory. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So it's a work in progress. We'll work at it and see how things progress and make changes if we think it's the right thing to do. So one of the things that is important about this, talking about the Saturday practice, the past couple of years with being online like this, one of the very practical things that we have missed by not being in the shrine room, not being at the center, the center has missed the revenue from the offerings that people generally bring when they come to the center. So, we've been able to remain, stable and fluid and so on, financially with the center, but there has been a trough, and that trough needs to be filled up and so on. So one of the things that is part of practice is our generosity. So we will be requesting, and it's not imperative that you do this, if you can afford to do it, it's great, but we would, ask that maybe everybody that comes would contribute a $10 contribution, and if there's a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks that, you don't have the extra cash and then you can do it later on another time, that's fine too. And there's been some people who have volunteered to be sponsors for this, to help Dharma Surya, because as a practical standpoint, they still have to pay for the gas and electric. They still have to pay for all the other services that they have and the things that happen in the center. And not to mention that there still is a mortgage payment that is being paid off, although there's no interest attached to that mortgage payment, which is a very good blessing. But we still have some money to pay off there. So that's an important feature. It's an important feature for us as participants to be generous with that. So I hope you recognize that as part of the practice.
Just, Lance, I drive down every once in a while and write a check, of course, more than $10. That's just the way I do it. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And
I just did that. So
Nope.
I'm very close.
yeah,
At least
nobody's
now.
keeping score, and on this count, and but just understand that it is part of the process, and it's how these centers manage to stay alive. So we appreciate that, whatever anybody can do, and it's not required, as I just said. Okay. So with all that said, now let's begin by, I want to ask everybody, what do you think we should be talking about? What kind of a question do you have that you want to get answered either now or in the not too distant future, within, our Buddhism 101? What's important to you?
Meditation is important to me because it's something that I struggle with. I try to spend time every morning, and whenever I have an extended period of time. One time recently, which is I'm not going to be able to do for a while, I was able to sit in my family room for 2 hours alone. And that was a stretch for me, but I find that when I'm meditating and trying to focus on no thought and on emptiness, I discover what a storm is going on in my mind. A lot of that is probably because there are so many storms going on around us.
Okay, I understand.
I read constantly about it, all the different writers that you know of, but the doing of it and the following the breath and accomplishing it has frustrated me, because I let the world intrude, and the world's not very nice now. Not that it has been for a long time, and that's my big challenge. I think if you master meditation, you've mastered the core of what the teachings are. Because you can banish the discursive thinking from your mind that way. And that's what I'm struggling with.
Okay. Well, I think our Saturdays are going to be patterned for that. You know, that's when we can really dig into establishing a good, stable routine. So a few days ago, last week sometime, I don't remember the exact day, but I did send everybody again a sheet of paper that is titled Buddhism 101, The Stages of Meditation Practice. So if you can look in your email and print that, or if you need a copy, you know, we'll have copies, but that's one of the things that we'll be focusing on with our Saturday practices, to how to create that mindfulness for meditation and so on. So it's going to be based on exactly this. And then there are some steps that come after this that we will move into. But first, we have to create this fundamental program. So that we're going to be working on that. So
Lance, doesn't that flow from Kempo's book? I have his book that I've read.
it comes exactly from Kempo's book, and it's what we've actually been talking about these past 8 weeks.
Yes, and I have the book.
So, and we'll be talking, you know, so we'll be putting it into practice. You know, we'll be putting it into practice. And a lot of it is just going to be having the support of the brothers and sisters who are there to be doing this together and have our energy kind of coalesce together and kind of help us to sit up straight and to practice more earnestly and so on like that. And it really does work that way. I know many years ago, I've had lamas come to my house many times. And so when there was this one particular time where this one particular lama, it was very, very, very good. And we sat next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, and I got higher than I'd ever been in meditation, quiet meditation with him. I mean, he just catapulted me straight up. So, and since then, I haven't come down yet. So it does work that way. I've experienced it, and that's what we want to share. So,
what does that mean? Catapulted you higher in meditation?
well, definitely, I could feel, you know, an energy. You know, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rest our material body. We're trying to rest our intellectual investigation and just be able to open up this spiritual energy that we have within ourselves. And it's real. You know, last week, Joseph gave us a very good, you know, talk about his experience. So it's there for us. We just have to go through the preliminaries to be able to get to that point where we can open up. And then part of that is the support that we receive from each other. And in this case that I was just relating, from that Lama, I could feel that energy. You know, it was, you know, he may not have been sending it to me directly, but it was just something that I could, you know, I was part of. It was more than emotional. It wasn't an emotional thing. And it was like a catapult. It was just, so it's there, you know, and to deny it is to not take part in it, because there's too many testimonies of people who have engaged in this, who have had the experience to say, yes, it's a real experience. So it's a matter of making the commitment to doing the preliminaries to get to that state. Does anybody have any comment about that? What do you think about that? Ed, what do you think about that? Ed Jones, what do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't have any comment at this point.
Okay. Is that the answer you were looking for?
No, I don't think I was looking for anything in particular.
Okay. Do you think it's true?
I have no reason to believe it's not.
Okay. And this is one of the fundamental differences of Buddhism, is that meditation is a integral part of the process of realizing our Buddha nature, of realizing that. So whether we call it the Christ, whether we call it God, whether we call it Jehovah, whatever, that spiritual nature that we all have, the meditation is a key part in being able to do this. So there's many different methods, you know, Buddhism meditation is not the only one, you know, it's not exclusive, but it is very articulate in the way that it helps us to learn the process. Okay. So meditation, so we're going to, so on Saturdays, that's going to be how we're going to do this. Anybody else got a question or a comment or a wish, an aspiration for something? Yeah,
Lance,
Zara.
this is Sarah. Hi, this is Sarah. I'm dialing in tonight because I'm traveling. I'm driving, but I wanted to make sure I could listen in. Could you just quickly summarize what's happening on Saturday so I can make sure I understand the context of the conversation?
All right, well, I will be sending out an email message, but just very quickly, because I've already gone through all the detail, that twice a month on Saturdays in the afternoon, 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we're going to be opening up Dharma Surya Shrine Room for practice. So we'll be there and leading the practice and doing what people need to have done and so on. And then we'll be hanging out for the evening time. If people want to hang and go have dinner together or something like that, we'll have plenty of time to spend together and so on. So that's going to happen on the second and the fourth Saturdays of the month, starting on March the 26th.
Thank you.
Okay. And we'll be online. We'll do it on Zoom for those that can't be with us.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Tom.
I really like to encourage people to come and do practice. Really, I mean, to sit there, you mean, it doesn't matter if it's on the floor or if in a chair. Just being in the shrine room has a tremendous amount of energy. And then when you start sitting there or sitting in a chair or sitting on the floor, and we start doing mantra recitations, we'll do 100, maybe 200, maybe 500, maybe 1,000. But if you're doing that with your brothers and sisters, you can feel the energy that's going amongst everybody there. The discomfort that you get from your legs falling asleep, from your hips aching, all that goes out the door. Because you're concentrating on one thing, and just that one thing only, on reciting reciting that mantra. And until you do it, and after you do it, there's no words that really come out that even make sense. If you even try to read, you can't read. You can see the words on the paper. You don't really see the words. You're so focused and so in tune with everybody in that room. And you're so in tune with yourself. And it's an experience. that, you just can't get sitting on home watching it on Zoom, or you can do it on your own. You can sit and, and then do these recitations, but when you're doing in a certain space, that's very, it's very special, that's very sacred. There's a certain feeling, an experience that you will, that you will come away with. And once you experience that, you gravitate naturally to come to the center, to want to do these practices. And I really encourage people to do that. I mean, it's once you realize and experience that, there's nothing like it. There's no words that can truly capture that. So I really encourage you.
Thank you. Ed, did you want to say something? Okay. Somebody else, please. What would you like to ask? What would you like to talk about? Curtis, how about you?
I'm here. I just unmuting. I'm just glad to see friends, and I appreciate the honest discussion we have. And I really enjoyed hearing all the words of introduction and orientation from you, Lance. I enjoyed the way you said it, and I enjoyed, the thoughtfulness of what you planned for us. So I just affirm all of that.
Well, thank you. What do you think about freedom?
Me?
Yeah.
It's just another word for haven't got anything to lose. I think that's the way it says in the song. Was it Janis Joplin said that? But actually, it's really true. Freedom is when you're not attached. When you're, I forget how the words I just quoted, but when you can't lose anything because you're complete, you have the fullness
Freedom
within.
is just another word for having nothing to lose. Right,
Yeah.
Michael? Freedom is just another word for having nothing to lose.
Nothing left to lose.
Nothing left. Thank you. Nothing left.
Yeah.
To
So
a good description.
you've lost it all. So yeah.
Or you've
And that's
given it
good.
up. You've given
Yeah,
it
well,
up.
yeah, exactly, because real freedom is freedom from attachment and grasping.
Some people have it robbed from them, maybe, things robbed from them, but is that a freedom if you've lost it and now you're searching for it again? But to have given it up and not go searching for it again, that's freedom. Yes, Curtis, thank you. Did you have any more that you wanted to add to that?
No, I hope I get to freedom by the end of the 8 weeks.
We'll work on that.
I just wanted to take a second to change my interpretation of that. So freedom is an absence of clinging, not of attachment, because many attachments are quite healthy in a relative and actual way. It's the clinging that's problematic.
So in other words, we can have families, we can, have possessions and so on, and still have a deep understanding, a stability in freedom, despite those things. We see them just as temporary things. Our body is just temporary, and that we're free with that. We're satisfied with that.
An authentic relationship.
Okay, thank you. How about someone else?
Hard
Okay,
to chop Janice Joplin on that one.
Yeah. Louisa, what do you think? There must be something that, I know you've been a practitioner for quite a while and a student of Buddhism and everything, but what is it that you think that we should be looking into, or something that you'd like to investigate, or what do you think of that? How would you like to see things proceed?
I don't think I'm ready to make that statement yet. I've got a little more time to think about it. And I say that because probably everybody in this group has gone through your first Buddhism 101 and learned about the Buddhist story and the theory of Buddhism and all that. This has just been my very first class, other than the one that I did last, the Bardo Toto. So I read a lot, and so I've learned a lot on my own too, but I have not taken the course that you taught that was more teaching than discussion. So for me, I would have to go back to maybe some of your videos and do that, or else just kind of trot along and see where I'm going with all this. So that's one part of it. The other part, that yes, I have had a spiritual journey for many, many years. And I've been involved in many, I would say, groups, religious institutions. And I told myself that, and I no longer belong there, that I would be more of a free spirit and not be pulled into institutionalized religion or groups like that anymore. So I, in myself, and have a very strong feeling of non-attachment. Sure, you can belong to groups and gather and do, but I've often thought that that is where I'm supposed to be for myself.
Wait a minute, let me just make sure I'm clear. You wanted to be with groups, or you wanted to be more independent of groups?
More independent.
Okay. Okay.
And for me, non-attachment is a very strong thing that I live by. I have a lot of friends, I socialize and all this, but I'm not attached to any one group. And I think that comes from where I have been before, where I was attached to groups. And after a while, I thought, that's not for me. So to continue on, I'm not quite sure where my place is yet here.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you. That's very good. Both of those comments are important comments, and that's one of the things about Buddhism 101, that we want to be sensitive to the people who have been with us for a while, and we want to keep them interested and explore some new facets of our Buddhism and so on. So we want to do that, but at the same time, this is still Buddhism 101. And we have people who are always coming in, dropping in, whatever, who are looking for the basics. So we need to be able to stay with that and always, be sensitive for the people that need that. So we can bring the two together, I think. There might be some points that, we say, oh, we can't go past there. We're that's beyond us. We got to talk to the lamas for that, or something like that, or another class. but I appreciate what you just said. And I think that we will try and use that as goals for what it is that we're trying to do moving forward. You know, to do both. And tonight, I hope that I'm going to introduce something to you very shortly that kind of answers a couple of those questions, or at least has some empathy for a couple of the things that you said there that I think you'll find interesting. Thank you. So I still want to hear from everybody. Ed Joseph, how about you? What do you think that you'd like to learn about? What is it you think you'd like to share? What is it that what are you interested in with us here at Buddhism 101?
Yes, I think my interest is in the continuing toward objective truth, seeing things as they are, recognizing the impermanence of this life, the moment to moment, and to conscious awareness of the desire that we have, the endless desire that we have, and also the endless aversion that we have towards things. So in maintaining that awareness, that conscious awareness, that I can minimize both the desire and as well as the cravings, and while increasing from knowledge to understanding, and therefore getting out of ignorance. And yeah.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So would anybody like to follow up on anything that they've said or that someone else has said before we move on? Yes.
I'd like to throw out something that reveals such a primitive understanding that I'm really hesitant to do it, but since this is 101 and you're inviting it, I'm gonna do it. I'm still new enough to this, even though I've been here a year now, to this whole orientation, that often I have to resonate with things that people say, and later questions occur to me that I didn't have at the time. Some weeks ago, Tom was talking about, and I don't remember the exact context, but I remember one thing he said is all things want to live. And that if you walk out your back door, I mean, you can crush all kinds of forms of life without being aware of it. Well, my mode for years, long before I got involved in Buddhist 101, was if I'm sitting on my back terrace in the summer, Michael's been there a couple of times, and I'm bitten by a mosquito, I try to swat the mosquito. And if I don't get him the first time, I try to get him the second time. And with the rationale that I don't want to be bitten by a mosquito, and if I can get rid of this guy, I'm going to be more comfortable. But then thinking about what Tom said, and trying to adopt the Buddhist frame of reference, which is not my history. What should I be doing when I'm being bitten by that mosquito, which is a form of life, not one that I've ever regarded as having particular value, but is a sentient being. What should I do? I mean, should I just allow myself to be bitten? Should I go back inside? Am I justified? And where should I be on that? Tom got me thinking, but as he often does. But, very primitive, but
Well, it's a good question. Would Tom like to answer that? Anybody else want to answer that? Tom?
That's a great question. I mean, all beings, regardless of size of what they may be or how they came about, they all have a right to live. So depending upon your level of understanding that, if you understand it in the level that it's about my comfort, that it's about not being uncomfortable about being bitten, and you slap that mosquito and kill it. A lot of that has to do with your intention. I mean, are you killing that animal for the sake of just so you can be comfortable? Okay, then there's karma there. You've just created karma for yourself, like it or not. If you see the mosquito around you and you see it sucking on your arm and you blow it off, not kill it.
There's
And
karma
you're-
there too.
Of course, but you're because that mosquito has some kind of connection with you. That's why it's taken the blood from you. If you have complete understanding, you would just offer it. This body is very temporary. We're basically a walking corpse. In a certain amount of time, it's either going to be in the ground, rotting away, being food for other sentient beings, other insects, other animals. Now, if you're at that that level of understanding, then yeah, it's not a big deal. It's good. Take as much as you want. It's an offering. There are teachings that in certain sutras that the Buddha would allow insects. He would allow insects to, bite him and take what they needed from him, because he realized that we are completely impermanent. We don't have, and his level of awakening was so complete that he had no attachment to his body. But we're not nowhere. We're all beginners, or I'm a beginner. So I have a hard time, but I really try to put myself in that situation of that insect, that animal, whatever it may be. A lot of times, like even Lance says, when we're driving to the driving around together, and he'll see an animal on the side of the road, that's been killed by a car, or he'll say a prayer, because all life is valuable, regardless, all life is valuable. So it's all up to you, Ed. I mean, if you feel that hey, if this mosquito, this whatever insect that's that's bothering you, if you can, try to blow it off, shoo it off you. And if you accidentally kill it, say a prayer or say a mantra. But as long as you say it with meaning, there's yes, there are repercussions for it, but it might be lessened, So it's all in your intention. It's all in your intention. So, as far as that goes, the more connection that you have with these teachings, and the more connections you have with Dharma, you'll realize, that, hey, it's, we're here to benefit all other beings. And it took me.
How would you define sentient being? And Michael, I saw that you raised your hand, but let's, follow this through for another minute. And how would you define a sentient being? What is a sentient being?
Are you asking me, or are you asking just in general?
I'm asking you right now, but if anybody else has a comment about it, it'd be great to share it. But how would you define a sentient being?
Well, I mean, it's the types of births that they've taken, that the Buddha has said, from eggs, from moisture, from eggs, moisture.
So they have a birth.
There's certain births. Yeah,
There's a birth.
of course.
And then there's a reaction to stimuli.
Yeah, see, but see, I would even consider certain bacterias sentient beings. Or how about even a virus?
Well, generally we would think of, we're not getting too far out there.
Mhm.
And I certainly commiserate with that, but when we talk about a being that is born, a being that it reacts to stimuli, either attracted to or repulsed from stimuli, and can be injured in some way, and has a death. That there is a finite time that being will have to be alive, in the sense that we understand it. Those are the four criteria that generally define a sentient being. So animals fall into that category. We are of the animal kingdom, although we're human beings in that hierarchy. There are insects and all different kinds of birds and so on. And then there are beings that, like you're talking about, those that we can't see, those that are invisible to us, those that are in a drop of water, for instance, those amoebas or whatever and everything, or can they be considered to be that, and that we take them in and so on. So it's to have the, and even the inanimate things, we're all made up of cells, we're all made up of molecules, we're all made up of atoms, regardless of who we are, sentient beings or non-sentient beings. We're all made up of the same materials. And to realize that there's something with all of that, and then there's an energy that holds all of that together, and to be respective of that is part of the mindset. To say, I'm part of something, I may not understand what it all is, but it's all trying to be happy. And I'm trying to be happy too. And to be in a constant state of meditation, to be in a constant state of prayer, is a way to connect with that, to always be a spiritual person. So we've already been thinking that we're already a physical person, we're already an intellectual person, we're absorbed with our thoughts, we're absorbed with our body. We need to be absorbed with our spirituality. And then that's really crossing a threshold, of being a complete human being. So that, as Tom was saying, if you reflexively, slap your hand and kill a bug or something like that, because, without thinking about it, happens, and say, oh, I really didn't mean to kill it, I could have blown it away. But I'll say, Om Mani Padme Hum, or some prayer, some mantra, recognizing that being, that now that we've become a connection with that being, whether we gave it life or let it live, or we took its life. And being connected with that, being connected with nature, that's the point. That's the point. Michael, did you want to say something?
Yeah. With regard to our interaction with insects, we all have heard the stories of monks sweeping the path as they walk down the a monastery path. And I think that's that's usually pretty common when there's when it's an insect filled sort of day. I don't think they're really sweeping just about any casual ant that comes along. But I think what's key is when you have an opportunity to look at an insect, if it's biting you or about to bite you or another creature, and have some sort of knee-jerk reaction, then just that hesitation is a moment of compassion. And in mindfulness practices, compassion is actually a part of mindfulness. So we say that when we hesitate to take the life of a tiny being, we're having that moment of mindfulness, and that in itself is growth. That in itself is an exercise in compassion towards all beings. And then and we have to remember that whoever's dying in that dyad, whether it's me or an insect, that it's a meeting of our karma. It's not that either one of us is a victim of another. It's that we're crossing paths. So I think Lance, you pointed this out at one time, that that death, things that die in certain ways, that's their karma, that they die in certain ways. Death comes to all of us, but how you die is a relationship to the karmic winds that are following you. So I see that, a mosquito and myself coming together as a karma meeting. Now there's an opportunity for me, what I normally do, and I'm the kind of guy that takes bugs outside, and I mean all the time when I can catch them, spiders and things like that, crickets, and I take them outside, and that's an exercise in compassion and mindfulness. It's simple, and as long as you're doing that exercise out of compassion and not out of some kind of ego pride or about look at the good Buddhist that I am, then it's a good exercise because it's an interaction with another being. Sentience comes from, the word comes from from a Latin root, sentiamen or something like that. So it implies a self-awareness. It also implies the ability to feel or to have sensations. So I would say that bacteria can have sensations, but they're probably not very self-aware.
Well, thank you. So I hope that creates a little bit of food for thought. It's a very, fundamental question, but it is a question that we all need to recognize. And where are we in relation to nature? Are we superior to it, or are we just part of it? There's something I'd like to share. Michael, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Because I went through everybody and asked if there was something that you want to talk about or something that you want to learn or share or something. Was there something that you wanted to add to that part of the conversation?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay. Well then, when the Buddha first attained enlightenment, he had overcome some questions that he had, or some demons, as it's expressed in the story of the Buddha, that he had this demon of desire arose, this demon of hatred arose, this demon of ignorance arose in his mind while he was in very deep meditation. And he was able, in each one of those instances, as those different demons arose in his mind, he was able to rationally understand where they came from, why they were there, what they were trying to do. And he made the decision to say, I'm not going to follow that. I'm not going to follow that desire. I'm not going to follow that hatred. I'm not going to follow that ignorance. And demon, you get behind me. You follow me, because demon, you need to be enlightened yourself. So this was all within himself. You know, he's realizing this and saying this. And then he was able, when he overcame those three basic demons, for in his life, he had gotten to that point in his evolution, if you will. We're all going through this evolution. And in his evolution, he was able to, with those three overcomings, he then opened up to be free. He was now free of those three poisons of the emotions, the desire, the hatred, and the ignorance. And then what opened up to him was everything. He recognized everything. He recognized that he was part of nature. Nature was part of him. And that there was this dynamism that plays that we can transcend. Either we become part of that dynamism, which is just our dualistic nature, always going back and forth, always playing the game. But he realized that you can transcend that, and that everything that he began to do from that point, everything with his physical body, everything with his intellectual mind, that came out through his actions, through his speech, and through his spiritual mind, through his big mind, now all became for the benefit of the enlightenment of all beings. He wanted all beings to recognize what it is that he had recognized, not out of selfishness, but out of the realization that this is freedom. And this is what all beings want, is to be free. Nobody wants to be enslaved. No one wants to be unhappy, miserable in any way, whether it's an animal or whether it's a human being or whether it's an insect. They all are trying to be free. So I recognize that as this enlightened being, his entire purpose became for that enlightenment for other beings. His identity as a being disappeared. He transcended that. So with that experience, different things happened in his, in his mind and so on. And the sun came up and he was now, wow, now what am I going to do with this? It didn't go away. It now became his mindset. It became his mindfulness was this awareness now. And it was permanent, it wouldn't go away. What am I going to do with this? And then slowly he had 5 friends who had been with him, as a meditator, as a practitioner, as a yogi, and so on, who saw him and realized that he had gone through this transformative experience, and he was now the Buddha. He was radiating this light. It was clear to them who he was. He didn't even see it himself. He was just the light. He didn't recognize it. He was just the light. And they said, oh, now you are the Buddha. We recognize that. We see that. The Buddha was prophesied. You are the Buddha. You've made it. Tell us, what is it? How can we do it? What is it like? And he said, as the story goes, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to tell you. So for the next several weeks, he paced about and he started walking through India, northern India, and got to Varanasi, got to the holiest place in India, and completely walked through there and said, there's nothing for me here, because this was where the mother of Hinduism is, from which he came. He says, there's nothing for me there. And he walks straight through and he goes out to this meadow into what's called Deer Park, where these deer are, Sarnath. And his friends are following him all this time for 7 weeks and beseeching him every day, please teach us, tell us how to have enlightenment and everything. And finally he says, well, you guys sit down and I'm going to give you a teaching. He says, I don't know how to tell you what enlightenment is, but I can tell you how I got there. And it's up to you to be able to take that in, and you can use that as a guide for you yourselves to maybe attain your own enlightenment. Because we all have this nature. One of the things that he realized was that we all have this nature within us to know everything, or to be awakened. Not to know everything, but to be awakened to everything, to realize that we're part of everything. So he began to teach, and he taught the Four Noble Truths. So we've gone over this a number of times, and I think that everybody might recognize the Four Noble Truths as that the reason why we are suffering, that all beings are suffering, all beings have suffering. It doesn't mean that your entire life is suffering. There's a lot of happiness, but that happiness can invariably turn into suffering. Our body, we've got our body. It feels great when we're 19, 20 years old, but when we get to be 40, 50, 60 years old, our body starts being more of a liability to us than an asset. So every happiness, everything changes. It's that dynamism that we're part of that is here, but it's whether we can transcend it. So he said, all beings have suffering in their lives. We're born into it. And then the reason why we're born into it, the cause of that, is for our attachment. We want to have this life. We want to have this body. We want to have this room. We want to have these clothing. We want to have this relationship. We want to have a family. We want to have all these things. And we begin to identify who we are based on all these things, what you look like, what you think about, what kind of job you have, who your spouse is, all these different things become all part of your persona. And it's that desire that is part of one of the aspects that creates our suffering. The others are our aversion, our hatred. Another is our jealousies. Another is our enviness. Another is our greed. Another is our pridefulness. These are the basics of the ignorance, the over-abiding ignorance of all these things, of what this all is the cause of our suffering. That we have caused this ourselves. We wanted to be born. We wanted to have these things. We take responsibility for that. So there's the first truth, the second truth. The third truth is that we have to renounce this attachment. We have to renounce this suffering. We have to renounce this life as a form of our attachments and our aversions, our jealousies, and so on, that this life is allowing these things to manifest. So it takes a life to be able to recognize these things. So we need to recognize that we have this gift of life, but in the wrong hands, in the wrong attitude, it becomes a misery to us. But with that, it can become a liberation for us too, if we are thinking correctly. And one of the things that is helping us to do that is that everything that we do with our body, speech, and mind is for other beings. We're trying to overcome the ego, the attachments, the aversions, the self-identity. So we have to overcome the ego. So it's through being able to annihilate may be the wrong word. It's a very strong word, but being able to harness the ego, being able to harness our thoughts, being able to harness the power of our body and so on, and using that energy to be able to open up our heart center, because our heart center is the seat of our spirituality. It all doesn't happen up here. It all doesn't happen in the physical body. And realizing that we also have this spiritual center within ourselves, this life force, and recognizing that and being able to use that to be able to make that part of our being a complete human being is how we balance this all out. So then the cause for that is what we call the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is 8 sets of points of view of what it is to be a complete human being, what it is to be a righteous human being, a virtuous human being. So the first one is to have the right view of freedom, that we and everything else wants to be free. If you start thinking in that term, everything else starts falling into place. Everything wants to be free. And if we impose ourselves on other beings, we're robbing them of their freedom, and we're causing negativity to come back to us because of our thievery of what they're trying to maintain. So all beings want to be free. That's the first thing. The second thing is to have the right resolve to maintain this lifestyle, to have the right to maintain this attitude, to maintain this protection of this freedom for ourselves and for other beings, because what happens to other beings is happening to us. Likewise, what happens to us is happening to other beings. There is this reciprocal part that we are part of. There is this dynamism that we need to transcend, but at the same time, this is what we have to operate in. So we have to recognize that too. So we have to keep a number of thoughts in our mind kind of simultaneously. But to have this right resolve, to have this protection, to have this understanding is very important. That's the second. So we're talking about the Eightfold Path here. And this Eightfold Path is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, just to keep this in context for you. So the third is to have the right speech. This is very important. It's the third thing. The third thing is to have the right speech. What does that mean? It means do not lie. Do not delude yourself. Do not delude others. And there's going to be plenty of times when you don't know the truth. So we just own up and say, I don't know. When you're trying to figure something out, say, I don't know. Or maybe you can figure something out, and that's good. But maybe you change your mind. Maybe you find out something else along the way and you have to change your mind. So just because you discovered what seems to be true doesn't mean that it's absolute, because everything is relative. And as we move along, things can change, conditions can change, and so on. So always speak the truth, whatever it may be, even if you don't know. If we create lies for ourselves, we hide in those lies, and our whole life becomes this illusion, this lie that we've created, you know, and we get trapped. It's like a spider's web. You've heard that analogy before. I'm caught in this web of all my stories and all these things, all these attachments I have, all these aversions I have. I'm being smothered by this web that I have woven for myself. You know, so if we always speak the truth, it's like cutting through that web. There is no web. There's nothing to bind us up. There's nothing to enslave us. So then the next thing, the fourth thing, is to have the right conduct, the right behavior. That whatever we do is going to be good behavior for ourselves, for other beings. We're not going to kill other beings. We're not going to harm other beings. We're going to always be thoughtful of other beings, their welfare and so on, and do things for others. So we're going to be virtuous beings. We're going to behave with virtue. So there's lots of permutations of that. I'm not going to go into that. We can talk about that later. This is all thought. This is all stuff for meditation and contemplation. But that's the fourth, is the right behavior. Then the next one after that is the right livelihood. The right livelihood that we live in a societies, civilizations, where we can't do everything for ourselves. We are in a communal kind of a family, friendship, kind of a lifestyle is very natural to what it is to be a human being, and many other animals live in the same way. Some animals seem to be loners at certain parts of their lives, but fundamentally they all come from families and so on, and so we do too. And to realize that we have a place in society, and that place can change. When we're a kid, when we're a teenager, when we're a young adult, when we become more in our 30 years old, and we're taking careers, and then we're raising our families, and our roles, can be a little bit complex, but they should be wholesome. They should be virtuous, whatever we do. And we have respect for others people's choices, whatever they may be. We may not have the disposition to be a policeman, but thank goodness that somebody else does, because there are some people who have decided to be crooks and to be criminals of one type or another. And we may not be in a position to be able to protect ourselves, but thank goodness that there are policemen who choose to take that job, and we have respect for them. And the same thing for soldiers. And the same thing for doctors who heal us, and the same thing for lawyers who guide us along with what a virtue might be. If we're creating laws of how to behave. Lawyers can help us to understand that. They don't have to be bad lawyers and so on. But whether they're carpenters or they're trash collectors, everybody's got a place, and those places can change as we move through our lives. So to have the right livelihood. So then the sixth one of the eightfold path is to have the right effort. That no matter what we're doing, what our speech is, what our behavior is, what our livelihood is, that we're moving forward. We're not allowing ourselves to fall back. We're not allowing ourselves to spiral out of control downward. That we're moving in a forward direction, that we're not getting lost in a circle or something like that. That we have goals for ourselves, and we set obtainable goals for ourselves. That's the sixth. The seventh is to have the right mindfulness of all this, to have the right ability to be able to develop the objective method to be able to recognize what our mind is thinking about, what our intellect is thinking about, how we're organizing all this, to be mindful that we're making these choices, what the choices are, what the results are, and how to navigate through all of that. We got to make changes. How do we do that? To be mindful for that, to have the right mindful concentration. Meditation is part of that. Because sometimes the meditation means that we are transcending, we are going out of our everyday subjective life into more of an objective view. We're rising above things. So we're kind of leaving our body behind. We're leaving our brain behind, and we are rising above that to gain this meditative view of things that is free from the immediate connections to our other emotions, the hatred, the ignorance, the jealousy, the envy, the pride, the greediness, and so on. So we identify those things, and to recognize that mindfulness is having the ability to be able to transcend that, to get into our meditative state of mind. So that's the seventh thing. And the eighth thing, the last thing, is to have the right concentration of all of this. And what that means is like the right absorption. How we absorb when we're a teenager is going to be way different than the way that we absorb when we're 30 or 40 years old. You know, but recognizing that we do what we have to do at certain points to maintain this balance, and that balance, that equilibrium, changes from time to time and so on. But it's all within us all the time. It's all within this physical body. It's all within this intellectual mind. It's all within this spiritual body that's in our heart center. So the right concentration, the right absorption of all these things. So there's an old saying about, you know, think of yourself as being the temple of God. You're carrying around this temple. And as such, that you have a right, you know, a bearing about that, a right elegance about that, and so on. So there's more about all these things, but this is, you know, the basic first teaching that the Buddha gave to his 5 disciples in order that they can begin to recognize their true nature, what they call the Buddha, that we all have this. So whether you call it Buddha, whether you call it Christ, whether you call it God, whether you call it Yahweh, whether you call it Lao Tzu, whether you call it Brahma, whatever you call it, whatever name of a tradition that you come from or that you think of, that you've read about or something, it's all the same. So is this making any sense? I mean, can you understand? So what I just outlined here were the 5 basic poisons that make up the 84,000 emotions. So the 5 basic poisons were ignorance, ignorance, hatred, desire, jealousy, and greed. Those are the 5 basic poisons. And then the way to overcome them is the realization of the 4 noble truths and the recognizing the suffering, recognize the cause of suffering, which is our attachment to these 5 basic poisons and all the different emotions. And then that we have to separate, we have to renounce that, we have to be able to balance that in our lives with no attachment and so on. And the way that we do that is through the Eightfold Path. This was his first teaching. This is basic Buddhism 101. It doesn't get any more fresh than that. Those are things that you should commit to your memory. You know, we haven't made a strong point about what it is that we should know from Buddhism 101. But I think at this point, I think we need to be able to start emphasizing. If you want to continue, you really need to understand these things. You need to commit this to memory and to take some time to contemplate these things. So now, does anybody have any comments or questions? Louisa, what do you think about that? Have you heard about the 5 poisons and the 4 noble truths before?
Yes, I have. Yes, thank you for going through them again.
Did it make sense to you?
That's what I try to live by. Yes.
Thank you. Ed Joseph, how about you? Have you heard these expressed this way? Joseph, are you with us? Okay. Anybody else like to comment on this? Gary, how about you?
Yes, I read them often. My adherence to them is incomplete, but I'm still trying.
Okay. So you recognize them as being discussed before?
Oh, yes, often. And in the literature that I read,
Okay,
they're everywhere.
okay. Ed, how about you? Ed Jones?
Well, we've been through them a number of times and they're starting to resonate.
Okay.
And
All right,
so,
and I can presume that means that you're beginning to recognize that happening and that it's true?
I don't think I ever disputed that it was true, but I feel it more.
Okay. You're seeing maybe I'm coining a word, the integralness of this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
yes, Lance.
Yes, Ed Jones. Excuse me, Ed Joseph. Yes.
Yes, I did hear you. For whatever reason, I could not unmute myself. Yes, I did. Those poisons and full virtues and the eight paths. Actually, I've been doing my best. I think for the past 8 to 10 years or so to live by them. And the experience that I had shared last week is part of the integral process towards the destination, if you will, of enlightenment. So yes, it's just being aware of them and having some understanding, and it makes for being a better person. It makes for having the peace of mind. It makes for, while those things are very simple, the power, the integrative power that those things have, those virtues and the applicability that that they have, when I begin to apply it, people would say, Ed is around, I would behave differently. Even though I was not a religious person, and so people begin to see something. I didn't know what they saw, but around me they would behave differently, So that's when later on, many years later, 8-10 years later, that's when I discovered that the power that there is in integrity, the power that there is for objective truth, the power that there is in seeing things as they are. And that's how one is really able to bring himself or herself into freedom. Yes. So so the 5 poisons, the 4 truths, noble truth, and the 8 paths. And when you do the permutation, it's almost like it's almost like endless in terms of what can be derived from them. Yeah. So thank you for bringing this again to my consciousness.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So now I know other people here have heard this all before and would have very good things to say about this. But if you don't mind, I want to move on to another point here. Yes, Louisa.
There are a lot of teachings that the Buddha gave to his disciples. But if you were to select, there's so many teachings, but if you were to select one of the real gold nuggets from all his teachings that you carry in your heart much of this, but if you were to select one or two, what would you see that being, Lance?
Well, for me personally, it would have to be the four truths. I mean, because recognizing that, realizing that, I mean, is the basis of everything else. The Eightfold Path is the guide to Buddhahood, is the guide to liberation. If you live those eightfold paths, that you will be a good, virtuous person. So it would have to be that. What do you think?
Thank you.
What do you think it would be?
I think that you can be a whole, complete human being, just like you were created to be, if you followed these paths and they became very profound in your heart.
And your mind and your intellect. That you become conscious of this.
Yeah, you become aware, you become knowing, even though you don't know everything that is spiritual out there, you carry it in your heart. You know it there. Yes, you can know it in your mind, but it's in your heart where it resonates day in and day out.
Yeah, you become the embodiment of it. There's
You
a
become it.
There's a question that
Yes.
came up that a student asked the teacher and said, why do I need to learn all this? I'm a good person. You know, I'm raised in a good family. I've got all these nice things. I know these things. Why do I need to know all this? And the answer is that we need to recognize our impurities, that there are things that are lurking somewhere that we don't recognize. We need to recognize those impurities, those contaminations, so that they can be purified. We can't take for granted that we are there, that we have come to that level of perfection. Otherwise, we wouldn't be a human being. Part of being a human being is dealing with these things. So otherwise, we continue in the non-virtue of these peccadillos and the non-virtue of this unwholesome behavior, unwholesome thoughts, and so on that lead us to suffering. So, you know, one question I was thinking about asking everybody is, when was the last time you felt sorrow? When was the last time you felt suffering? And what was it? You know, but that's a big question that leads to a lot of places. But everybody could think about that. You know, what makes you unhappy? What brings out your hatred? What brings out your ignorance? You know, what happened to you in the yesterday, today, last week, whatever, to have you, recognize, oh yeah, I'm suffering. I've got this miserable aspect in my life that I would love to trade. I would love to get rid of. So it's being aware of that and set about to purify the causes of those sorrows, the causes of those sufferings. That's what we're trying to do. And one of the most important features of all of this is that we can do this in a lifetime. We don't have to wait. Now, it's not that we're going to get there, but it's being on the path that matters. because that path is a long and winding road and we have to live each day. But if we start throwing things out and saying, oh, I don't have to worry about that, I'll wear some other life or something like that, that's going to be the thing that's really going to pull you down. And maybe you'll become that mosquito that somebody is whacking on the back of their hand because they didn't take it all so seriously. So spend, 100 so lives as a mosquito and see what it is to have people think of life as being meaningless. So it's all connected. So I just want to introduce this to you quickly, and we're going to pick this up next week. But I think just to put this in a little bit of a perspective, I'm going to put this up. So when we enter into this mind stream, when we enter into this mindful concentration, the seventh of the Eightfold Path, it's called the stream enterer. Everybody can see this on the screen? And this paper I sent to everybody, this is a graph, or this is a spreadsheet that's part of this other paper that I sent you late this afternoon. So the first thing that we're doing, we're entering this stream of consciousness, this stream of understanding. And when we're there, we abandon these fetters. See this, it says abandon fetters, the fetters that are holding us. We abandon our identity view, that we are important, that we are the only one, that we have an indestructible, or rather that we have an individual identity that is special beyond anyone else's. So once we enter the stream, we begin to give up that identity view. The second is that we give up our doubt in the Buddha. And let's replace the name Buddha with awakened one. That we give up our doubt in being awakened. That we can be awakened. That we can be a complete human being in this lifetime. And that we give up, this one's very interesting, that we give up the fetter of the ascetic or ritual rules. The ascetic or ritual rules. Now, this goes to the heart of what many of us, I think, have thought of individually. Louisa identified it today, and it's something that kept me away from spiritualism or being involved in an organization for a very, very, very long time, because I felt like I was a spiritual person, but I felt that any organization that I joined was inherently corrupt, and I didn't want to get sucked into the corruption. So I said, oh, I can keep myself pure by staying out of it, because I saw all these traps in there. And my father was Jewish, my mother was Catholic. I grew up in that kind of an atmosphere, with people. I had friends who were Jewish, I had friends who were Catholic and so on, Christian and so on. And then I started reading and studying about Hinduism and going to different ashrams and so on. And I could see the corruption everywhere I went. But still, I wanted to find something to help me to understand what this was that I was experiencing within myself. And when I came across the Dharma, the Buddha, then I found a way that was doing this. I found a set of a system whose fundamental thing was to be able to cut through the ego, that recognized this corruption, even in its own temples. And they go through great lengths to try and preserve the integrity of the teachings and so on. They still have their peccadillos and so on. There's still personality there and all that, but we're able to cut through. And it's not the only one. You can find this in Christianity. You can find this in Judaism. You can find it in Hindu. It's there, but it's not real accessible. You got to dig for it, you know. In Buddhism, it's kind of out there, you know, and we're seeing it more and more because of the lamas that have come and so on like that. But there's also Zen Buddhism that's been here for a very long time, and there's also Theravadan Buddhism that's been here for a long time. So there's been other forms of Buddhism and everything. One other interesting thing I want to say is I've been reading the Dao De Ching, and I read it many years ago, and I thought it was great then, and it's great now. And it is the essence of what we might call humanism. It's like taking Buddhism and taking out all the references to the Buddha, all the names, all the not the concepts, but all that individualization, all these lists and so on that we go into in Buddhism, and taking that out. And the Tao is very simple and pure like that. But as a result, it can be very abstract, you know, and you really got to think about what it means and everything. So I started thinking to myself, well, why should I be studying that? Or maybe that's more pure than the Buddhism. Why should I continue studying the Buddhism? Why should I be talking about Buddhism? And I thought about that, and I came up with this. Oh, here it is. Buddhism feeds the ego. Now, doesn't that sound like a play on words? Buddhism feeds the ego with the virtue in the forms of exemplars who actualize human perfection. In humanism, it's very abstract. It's very difficult to put your thoughts around it. You can't put your arms around it. In Buddhism, we've got all these characters, which are all just reflections of ourselves. They're all just part of who we are, and gives us a way to be able to understand the human predicament, the human story. So it gives us something tangible, semi-tangible at least, that we can begin to intellectualize, we begin to see, and we can begin to recognize and so on. The next part of this is the manifested Buddha persona or personae, because there's many different Buddhas. The manifested Buddha personae are satisfied in their enlightened activity to be of benefit to all beings and to respect the worldly nature of things. That they respect other beings, but they also respect this planet and all of nature. And that's a very important part. So this Buddha nature, this Buddha persona, is satisfied to be in the enlightened activity. You know, once we learn all this stuff, we're hearing all this, now to practice it is really where the transformation comes. If we just learn the books and everything, but don't practice it, we haven't changed very much. But if we learn it and then we begin to practice it, as a matter of fact, if we just learn a little bit, but we practice a whole lot, we're going to make more of a difference than anything else. So the Buddhism has a place, as does Christianity, as does Judaism, as does humanism. All these things have a place, and they're all talking about the same thing. So that's what I wanted to share tonight. Anybody got any closing thoughts?
Be a good person. Do not what is evil, and be a benefit to all beings.
That's right. The 3 precepts. Those are called the 3 precepts.
Very simple. Doesn't get any simpler than that.
Okay. So I sent this to everybody in your email. So if you can, open it up, read it. If you can print it, study it. It's really good. This is a why as we are doing things. People want to know where they are and everything. This paper will help that. So Tom is completely right. You know, it's very simple, but for our complex minds, we got to pick it apart and pick our minds apart, pick apart all those little tendrils of the webs that we've woven for ourselves, and then put it back together again, and maybe only have 8 spokes, and those 8 spokes are the Eightfold Path. Okay, anybody else got anything? I hope it wasn't too much. We'll pick this back up next week with the fetters. We'll talk more about it because it is important teaching. All right, well, Gary has had to leave because I guess his responsibilities at home called him away. Okay. So we'll do the dedication prayer in our prayer books. So please, we're going to go to page 21 and 22, which is the dedication prayer by Lord Jigdan Sumgun. And Jigdan Sumgun is the founder of our particular lineage, of Drikung Kagyu lineage, which we'll talk about another time in depth. But here he really encapsulates the dedication of what we're doing for the benefit of others. So I'll recite this out loud. And if you all can follow along, read it. If you can recite it along with me with your microphones off, it's a very powerful prayer. And if you can incorporate these prayers, into your regular practices, will have enormous benefit. So we begin. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all beings. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. So we'll be here next week for Buddhism 101. So I hope everybody can join us. And if you have any questions, anything, you want to give me a call or write an email or something, I'll be more than glad to respond as quickly as I can.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome, Ed. Thank you.